today's topic is what to do after a binge. What to do after a binge. Let's just say you had the worst binge ever. You demolished everything in the kitchen. You feel horrible and you're vowing that this can never happen again. And you tell yourself you're not eating again for like 3 days until you get rid of the result of the binge and all of that. Well, right there is a lot of what not to do after a binge. So today I'm going to tell you what to do after a binge to make sure they don't happen again, and also what not to do, because sometimes what we do to try to help ourselves ends up backfiring. So binge eating can leave you feeling overwhelmed, guilty, out of control, full of self-recrimination, and it is just all too easy to fall into that feeling of despair and self-criticism, which is often then followed by more binge eating. I can't believe I did that. I hate myself. What's in the kitchen, right? It's a horrible, horrible cycle. And it is possible to break that cycle. So whether you're dealing with this for the first time, highly unlikely, but you never know, or if it's an ongoing struggle, some people have struggled for decades, knowing what to do after one of those binge eating episodes can turn that horrible, awful, challenging, terrible time into an opportunity for growth and change. And by the way, just really quickly, a lot of people say, when they talk about binging, a lot of people say they binged when they ate 4 cookies. P.S. That is not a binge. Others describe eating 40 cookies. Yeah, that's a binge. And of course, that 40 cookies, sometimes that's just the beginning. So let me just really briefly describe what binging is and isn't. So binge eating, according to the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It means eating within a short period of time or specific period of time an amount of food that is larger than anyone else would normally eat, feeling a total lack of control while you're eating. You just can't stop, even though you're telling yourself, I don't want to do this. Why am I doing this? What's wrong with me? You just can't stop. And it means you're eating really fast, more quickly than normal. You eat until you're way past full. You're often just so physically uncomfortable. It's horrible. And afterwards, you feel disgusted, depressed, guilty, shame, the whole thing. So that is a binge, as opposed to eating 4 cookies, which is not a binge, or overeating, which is also not a binge. And here's why binge eating is actually not about food. So as counterintuitive as it sounds, binge eating is not about willpower, control, or addiction. It is not even about food. It is a negative coping strategy that you're using to numb, soothe, distract yourself from other things, difficult thoughts, difficult feelings, anxiety, loneliness, anger, sadness. Food becomes the solution to whatever problematic thought or experience you may have. And just to make things difficult, sometimes we're not aware of what's going on inside because we go so quickly to food that we don't even know we're being triggered or activated. But I want you to know that freedom is possible by getting to what's eating at you, getting to why you're eating. I like to say it's not about willpower, it's about why power. When you figure out why you're doing what you're doing, you can find a different way of being with yourself and stop binging. I cover that in a lot of my other episodes. Today, I want to specifically talk about what to do after a binge. So immediately, your first instinct might be to restrict food or to punish yourself with exercise. That will only backfire. That will always backfire. So instead, here are some do's and don'ts. So do not restrict or go on a diet. Dieting immediately following a binge eating episode just perpetuates that cycle of restriction and overeating or binging. Even if it seems like you're being good, quote unquote, good by restricting and oh my God, I ate so much, I'm just going to kind of nullify the calories by not eating. That deprivation only amplifies that urge to binge later. It also negatively impacts your metabolism. When you drastically cut calories, your body responds by slowing down your metabolic rate. What does that mean? It means it makes it harder to lose weight in the long run and easier to gain weight. And that leads to frustration and feelings of failure, which of course, in turn, leads to binge eating. Again, vicious cycle. The diet binge cycle, it is real. It is so real. We want to avoid it by not dieting. So focusing on dieting after a binge, it shifts your attention away from what caused the binge in the first place, the underlying psychological triggers that led to binging. Binging is a solution to the problem. It is not the problem. That might sound strange, but that's what it is. It is a solution. It is doing something for you. It is not the problem. So staying preoccupied with food and following food rules, that doesn't address the root cause of why you binged in the first place. And it definitely doesn't help you after you binged. Another do not over exercise to compensate for that binge. A lot of people say, okay, let me calculate all the calories I had. Okay, I will spend the next 18 hours on the treadmill and the Peloton. I'm going to just make it as if it never happened. Well, so that's what restrictive dieting, over exercising, that's the goal. Like, oh, I'm just going to like make it as if it never happened. But it also disconnects you from your body's natural hunger and fullness signals. And when you're honoring your physical needs, your hunger, and you stop dieting, you stop thinking about what you should eat, and you think about what you want to eat, what your body wants to eat, you're not going to swing between those extremes of deprivation and binging. So to create change, you really have to understand the emotional drivers of the behavior of binging. And that's why I often say, be curious and not critical. Critical is, oh my God, I binged. I suck. If people knew about this, they would be horrified. I'm horrified. I'm so grossed out by myself. What is wrong with me? How do I know what this feels like, by the way? Because these are all the things I told myself. I would just be filled with self-recrimination when I was in my eating disorder cycle of restricting, binging, and purging over and over again. And every time I had a binge, I would diet, I would over-exercise, I would tell myself how awful I was and how disgusting I was. And, eventually, of course, I would turn to food just to silence my own mean voice. So I don't want you to do that. Really want you to think about your why. So when you compassionately seek to understand the deeper meanings of the binge, to figure out your why power, not willpower, you can create true healing. So here's some do's. Do turn that critic into a friend. Again, after you binge, it's very common and understandable to feel that intense shame, self-loathing, feel like you got to punish yourself for your food crime. And you may accuse yourself of lacking willpower. You may be disgusted by yourself, criticize yourself for failing once again. And of course, this perpetuates that cycle of feeling bad and then turning to binging to feel better, or just to distract yourself from that mean voice. Beating yourself up does nothing to address the real reasons you binged in the first place. And it only makes you feel helpless, depressed, and worthless. And those feelings then trigger the urge to binge again. You see what I mean? It's just a terrible, terrible cycle. So instead of attacking yourself, which will lead to binging, be curious about what was going on. What was I feeling before I binged? Was I anxious, lonely, bored, sad, angry? What was going on with me? What did I need in that moment? What did I really need? What was I hungry for, if you will? What did I need in that moment that I was trying to get away from? And how can I respond to those needs and feelings in a more self-nurturing way? Remember, you are not the problem. Binge eating is the problem. Actually, it is the solution to the problem, but we can look at it in this context as, you're not the problem. Binging is the problem. It's not about you. You are not your behavior. You are doing this for a reason. What is that reason? And that reason, by the way, is not that you lack willpower, control, or that you're addicted to food. It may feel that way, but that is not the reason. So bullying yourself will not change anything. Instead, be willing to learn from the experience of the binge and really work on turning that inner critic into a friend. It makes a huge difference. If a friend came to you and said, "Oh my God, I just ate the kitchen. I am so embarrassed. I am so horrified. I totally just binged." Would you say to your friend, "You are so disgusting. That's gross. Get out of my sight. I don't like you anymore"? Of course not. What would you say to your friend? It's probably going to be something kind, supportive, reflective, understanding, right? How about you try doing that for yourself? Be a friend to yourself. The friend that you are to other people, be that to yourself. What a radical concept. Often we take care of everybody else, right? You take care of everybody else. You're kind to them, warm, generous, understanding. You listen to them, you take care of them, and then food takes care of you. It's time for you to take care of you in a different way. Number 4, practice self-reflection. So instead of criticizing yourself, take a moment. Remember, that binge is trying to tell you something. A binge is a communication from you to you. Let's reframe it as, something's going on with me, and I need to listen to what that is. What is this binge telling me about me? Your goal is to understand the message of the binge, not to be filled with self-recrimination. So again, reflect on what triggered the episode of binging. And it's understanding what's going on can really help you address the root cause rather than look at the symptom. The symptom is binging, but what's the cause? No one just out of the blue goes like, I must eat everything in sight. It may seem like that, but there is always, always, always a reason. If you have been listening to my show, you've probably heard me tell the story of Jenna, who said suddenly ice cream was calling her name. It's also something I write about in my book, The Binge Cure. She said ice cream was calling her name. Nothing was going on. Nothing was bothering her at all. So she thought she was a food addict and addicted to Chunky Monkey. It turned out that what she was watching on TV as she was Netflix and chilling after a perfectly fine day, what she watched on TV actually triggered her and caused some really intense emotions. But before those emotions could come into her conscious awareness, she went to ice cream for comfort and distraction. So that's why even if it seems like it's about food, it is not. So ask yourself, what needs were you trying to meet with this binge? Maybe you are seeking comfort. Binging on comfort foods is comforting. Maybe you were distracting yourself. If you're thinking about what you're eating and you're mad at yourself for what you're eating, hey, you're not thinking about the fact that your boss is upsetting you, your partner is pissing you off, your kids are on your last nerve, or whatever it is, or your sister or brother or someone in your life that you're really upset with, but you feel weird about that. You can't be upset with them. So why not be upset with yourself for what you ate or what you weigh, right? That's distraction. So were you distracting yourself? Were you symbolically filling a void? Nobody is like, "Oh, I feel really empty and there are holes in my life and in my soul. So let me just eat a bunch of food and symbolically fill that void." Nobody says that consciously, but that's the unconscious message. That's the unconscious action. We feel empty when we're lonely, or when something is missing from our lives, we feel empty, right? So if we eat a lot of food, then we symbolically fill that emptiness. So again, Be curious. Why did you binge? Instead of, oh my God, I binge. I can't believe it. It's horrible. I'm horrible. How about why? What was I hungry for? If you are eating so much that your stomach hurts, maybe you're converting emotional pain to physical pain. If you're in physical pain and you still can't stop eating, which is definitely a thing that a lot of people experience, ask yourself what emotional pain you might be in. If you were not focused on the physical pain of binging, what is the emotional pain of your life? So be curious, and consider how you can meet your needs in a way that, aligns with your values. You don't want to fill up on food because you're empty. You want to fill up on relationships and experiences and have more satisfaction and enjoyment in life rather than having satisfaction and enjoyment, which is, of course, in a binge, it only lasts a little while and then it's a horrible, awful mess. But so ask yourself some hard questions. It is easier to focus on the fact that you binged and beat yourself up than it is to get in touch with, oh, I binge because I'm lonely. Oh, I binge because I'm really upset with someone I care about. Or I binge because I feel enraged and helpless and there's nothing I can do. And I can't stand that feeling. So I'm going to focus on how I can do something about food. Like, really, it's easier to focus on food and follow a diet plan than it is to look at what is eating at you. But in order to create the binge cure, and I call my book The Binge Cure, and I call my method the Binge Cure Method, why do I use the word cure? Because I do not believe in recovery. I have done this work purely treating eating disorder patients and clients in my as a psychoanalyst and as a coach. I've only seen people with eating disorders for over 2 decades. And I can tell you that you can be cured. If we're going to use cure as, I don't do that anymore. That's something I used to do. It is in my rear view mirror. Now I wake up and I think about my day, not my diet. It doesn't matter how long you have struggled. You can change this around, but only if you stop focusing on what you're eating and look at why. I don't believe in recovery because you're always in recovery. Who wants to be in recovery forever? That sounds horrible. You don't want to wake up every day and think about being good and have a meal plan and a food plan and be accountable and all of that, do you? I don't know. That always sounded just terrible to me. But people would tell me, no, it's something you got to deal with the rest of your life. Huh? The rest of your life. Oh, no, thank you. No, thank you. And I was, as some of you know, the poster child for eating disorders. I would restrict, I would binge and purge. I had all the eating disorders. I struggled from the time I was 5 years old to college. And then I went to therapy and I talked about everything but what was going on with food. Never talked about food, not once, not a single time. And by the time I left therapy, all my eating disorder behaviors were gone, cured. And I never once talked about food. Not once, not a single time. I think one time my therapist made reference to the fact that I was like, oh, naturally thin. And I thought, if only you knew. So it is possible to heal and to move on from this. You do not have to be in recovery. You do not have to think about this the rest of your life. If you're thinking about food, you're thinking about the wrong thing. If you're thinking about food after a binge, you're thinking about the wrong thing. You want to think about food only in terms of, why did I choose that? What was going on with me? Why? Why did I binge? Not, what did I binge on and how can I be better and let me go on that next new diet that's going to somehow cure my binging forever, because, binging is not about food. So going on a diet does not do anything. It only sets you up for a binge, the diet binge cycle. Okay. So also ask yourself, here are some questions specific questions to ask yourself. What were you feeling before the binge? Were you avoiding a hard feeling like sadness, stress, boredom? And by the way, if you are on the Instagram live feed and this is piquing your interest, or you can relate to what I'm saying and you feel comfortable, please leave a comment, a question, or maybe think about what you were thinking about the last time before you binged, and share that. If you have a question, this is the time. You have my rapt attention. I'm here for you. So what were you feeling before the binge? Were you avoiding sadness, stress, boredom, something like that? Were you feeling anxious? Whatever it is, learn to name the emotion, then express it, and then respond to yourself. If you were bored and restless, consider what you would do instead, because boredom is about not having something to do. Often we say we're bored when we really have something else going on. But if you really are bored and you just need something to do, don't make that thing that you need to do eating, binging. Do something else. Do a project, read a book, watch a show, do something creative. If it really is that you didn't have anything to do something else. If you felt lonely, consider cultivating solitude. Now, a lot of times you'll hear, oh, if you're lonely, call a friend. Well, what if you don't have friends that you can reliably call on? What if it's 2 a.m. and you're just not going to call a friend? Or what if you don't want to be vulnerable with the friends that you have? What then? Calling a friend is not going to help. Instead, think about cultivating solitude. So loneliness is being alone with yourself, but with a kind of a mean part of yourself, either a toxic part of yourself that is mean to you, or just an absence, like just a kind of like an indifferent part of yourself. Solitude is being alone with a warm, nurturing, kind, and supportive part of yourself. That's a totally different experience. Loneliness feels bad. It feels lonely. We have that ache of loneliness, which we can feel, by the way, in a crowded room or around other people, or with someone else. It is possible to feel profoundly lonely with other people. And that is just the worst feeling, isn't it? And we can feel solitude with ourselves. So cultivating solitude so that you can be alone without feeling lonely. And that really means, again, just showing up for yourself the way you would show up for other people, with kindness and compassion and support. If you were frustrated, if you're feeling frustrated, express that. Maybe write about it in your journal, or go exercise. Now, I don't recommend exercise as the way to deal with feelings, but exercise is a great way of dealing with the physicality of certain emotions: frustration, irritation, anger, rage, all of that. Like we feel it in our bodies, and often we eat or binge certain, especially carby foods, as a way of sedating our bodies, as if by sedating our bodies, we're going to calm our minds. So instead, I recommend, if you're feeling frustrated and you're mad and you can just feel that wound up feeling, do some exercise. Even if it's dancing around in your apartment or house by yourself. It doesn't mean like go lift weights or go run around the block. Just whatever it is, just like move your body to discharge the physical impact of those feelings, so that you don't binge to sedate yourself instead. Another question to ask yourself is, what were you thinking before the binge? Pay attention to your thoughts. Were you telling yourself you're not good enough? Something like that. Those negative thoughts and beliefs make you feel bad about yourself, and they make you feel bad. And that leads to binging for comfort or distraction. Thoughts lead to feelings, lead to behavior. If we're only focused on the behavior, nothing is ever going to change. The Binge Cure method entails recognizing and changing your thoughts so that you won't have the feelings. And by the way, sometimes we do have feelings that because things happen in life, learning new ways of responding to that, and then everything changes with the behavior. If you're just focused on the behavior, nothing's going to change. Challenge the idea, for example, if you have the idea that you're not good enough. Challenge that idea. Remember, you learned that belief. You learned it. No one is born going, I'm not good enough. No, this is something we learn. And that's the good news, because what we learn, we can unlearn, and then we can find a new way of being with ourselves. So by approaching binge eating with the mindset of a compassionate detective, I like to say I'm a detective of the mind, solving the mystery of why you're doing what you're doing. If you're a compassionate detective rather than a harsh critic, you really create a foundation for true healing and transformation. And by that, I mean transforming the way that you relate to yourself and the world and other people, and therefore food. And with practice, you can, and I'm using this word purposefully, you can nourish yourself emotionally, truly nourish yourself and nurture yourself, and break free from the binge cycle for good, the diet binge cycle, right? It's the worst, that diet binge cycle. So that is, what were you feeling before the binge? What were you thinking before the binge? And when I come back from the break, which I'm going to have in about 30 seconds or maybe less, we're going to talk about how to identify what you were needing before the binge, so that the next time you can think about these questions and answer them, so that you don't use binging to avoid your feelings, to avoid your thoughts, or to avoid your needs. And then we're also going to talk about how to build resilience against future binge eating episodes, how to develop new coping strategies, get comfortable with those emotions that we're trying to binge away, and get comfortable with self-reflection. So I will see you all in 2 minutes. Stay curious, not critical. I will be back soon.
All clear. Back in 2.
Thanks, Jordan. If you're with me on Instagram, I have a 2-minute break on Voice America. I have a 2-minute break on Voice America, and then I'm coming back. So if you have any questions for me, now is the time. I am here for you. I'm happy to answer any questions. If there's anything you'd like to share or say or ask, please let me know. What of what I'm saying is, do you find the most challenging? Are you here? I see people on Instagram, but no, everyone's shy. That's okay. I also just want to say that whatever you're doing with food, as much as you might feel mortified, as much as you might feel just totally embarrassed and mortified and think you're the only person who's going through this, and that nobody else is as bad as you are or something like that, you are not alone. If you, like, after the family goes to bed, if you go into the trash and you dig out the leftovers from dinner and that cake or whatever, and you eat it and you sit there and you hate yourself, you are not alone. Someone else's are doing things like that.
Sorry to interrupt. Come back in 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Okay. You are not alone, and there is hope for the cure.
Welcome back to the Binge Cure with Dr. Nina. Have questions for Dr. Nina? Join her on the show at 866-472-5792. That's 866-472-5792. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to the Binge Cure with Dr. Nina. All right, we are talking about what to do after a binge. And I gave in the first part of the show, I gave some what not to do. Do not go on a diet. Do not over-exercise to compensate for the binge. Do turn your critic into a friend. Do be self-reflective and be curious about why you binged instead of focusing on what you ate. It's about why power, not willpower. Some questions to ask yourself are, what were you feeling before the binge? What were you thinking before the binge? And what were you needing before the binge? And remember that binge eating is a response to emotional hunger of some kind. So consider what you are hungry for in your life. Are you hungry for love? Are you starving for attention? Developing strategies to meet those underlying needs, whatever they are. It could be hungry for love. It could be starving for attention. It could be something else. It could be me time. I've had many people who are like, the only time they get time to themselves is when they have food for company and they eat, and that's their me time. So what do you need? What do you need? Developing strategies to meet those needs will liberate yourself from binge eating. So take a moment and ask yourself, what do I need? What am I truly hungry for? And then just listen to your inner self. What are you truly hungry for? Take a moment and listen, and let the answer come from a deep intuitive place within you. We all have intuition that we often learn to ignore or dismiss because sometimes we don't want to know what we know. So when I ask you, hey, what about people on Instagram? What are you hungry for? Think about it. If you feel safe, share it. No one knows who you are, will see your answers, because this does not show up in the Voice America or the podcast feed. It might be a need for connection, deep connection, meaningful connection. It might be a need for meaning. It might be a need for self-expression, being creative. It might be a need for rest. Maybe you just need to rest and you need some downtime. It might be that you need a sense of meaning and purpose in your life. Once you identify what those underlying needs are, you can brainstorm ways you can meet those needs without turning to food. If you're hungry for connection, you could join a support group. By the way, join my Dr. Nina's Food for Thought community on Facebook. It's people all over the world who struggle with binge eating and emotional eating, who get it and who are sick of dieting and being on that diet binge cycle, who want to get off the roller coaster and try something new. Make a new friend. Join my community, join someone else's community, connect with someone that is a friend already. Join another support group, do a community activity, join a meetup, if you're over 50, there's a online group. Well, it's not only online, people meet in reality, called stitch.net. So there are ways that you can resolve your needs other than with food. If you're starving for self-expression, journal, paint, dance, engage in whatever creative expression or activity that allows you to express your inner world. Write. And keep in mind that meeting those needs, it is an ongoing process. And it means you have to be patient. You have to be self-compassionate. You have to be willing to try new things. You have to be willing to go out of your comfort zone. But remember, good things do not happen in your comfort zone. You got to go outside your comfort zone to create change. And then you know what happens? Your comfort zone gets bigger. And it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because you get more and more and more comfortable with creating change. And you might not always get it right, whatever right is, and that is okay. What matters is you're turning to your to meet your emotional needs with care. That's what matters, as opposed to binge eating, which is self-abandonment. Binge eating is self-abandonment. Binge eating is saying, I don't care about myself. I just want to get away from myself. I don't want to think. I don't want to feel. I don't want to know anything that I know. I don't want to feel anything that I feel. I don't want to think about my needs. I don't want to think about myself. I just want oblivion. That's what a binge is. Give me oblivion. The binge zone is oblivion. You're not thinking, you're not feeling. You're just in a terrible zone. Unless you're thinking mean thoughts about yourself. Yeah, those happen. So the more that you practice self-reflection, the more you then practice self-care, because when you figure out what you need, what you want, it's a lot easier to then figure out, okay, how do I meet those needs? That's called self-care. And a lot of people, when I bring up self-care, they say, oh, well, no, I have to take care of other people. I mean, I can't take care of myself. That would be selfish. Or I can't take care of me. That would be selfish. No, this is selfish. Selfish is, I don't care about you. I'm all that matters. You don't matter. It's all about me. That's selfish. Selfless, minus a self, is I don't matter. It's all about you. I don't matter. It's all about you. That's selfless. And that is not healthy. Selfish is not healthy. Selfless is not healthy. In the middle is self-care. And self-care is, hey, you know what? I'm going to take care of myself so that sometimes I can be there for others. But sometimes, you know what? I'm going to choose me because that's right. It's the overused but perfect oxygen metaphor in the plane when the flight attendants say, they don't say it anymore now, it's a video, super cute video. When the oxygen masks drop, if the oxygen masks drop, parents, put the oxygen mask on yourself because you are no good if you put your oxygen on your kids. And you will suffocate and it's not good for anybody. You've got to get your own oxygen. And food is not oxygen. And as you practice this self-care more and more and more, it gets easier, right? At first, it's out of your comfort zone. The more that you do it, the more comfortable that you are. The more you're paying attention to what is eating at you instead of what you are eating, instead of just focusing on food, you start taking care of your true underlying needs. And guess what? You stop binging. You stop emotional eating, because whatever is going on with food, whether it's binging or emotional eating, it is a solution to the problem. It is not the problem, like I was saying before. If the problem is you don't have enough fun in your life, food's going to be fun. The more fun you have in your life, the less food is going to be fun. If you don't have enough people in your life and food kind of, people can be unpredictable, unreliable, and unavailable, food is always there. It is available, predictable, and reliable. But as soon as you have people in your life that feel safe, guess what? You don't need food for that purpose. There are so many reasons. So by staying curious about your inner world and staying committed to your own evolution, you can really develop a wonderful relationship with yourself, and then you stop binge eating, because thoughts lead to feelings, lead to behavior. Hey, I hate myself. I feel terrible. What's in the kitchen? Versus, I accept myself. There are things I want to change, but overall, I'm good with me. Oh, I feel good. I don't even think about binging, right? If you just focus on what you are eating, you miss the point. You will stay stuck. Really look at what is eating at you. Okay, so those are the questions to ask yourself. And now let's talk about building resilience against future binge episodes. Because each episode of binging is actually an opportunity. You can build resilience, you can gain insights into why you were eating, and then make changes. So what to do? Develop new coping strategies. Binge eating or emotional eating, it is a coping strategy. It is a way of coping. It is a negative coping strategy. When you develop positive coping strategies, then guess what? You stop binging. And when I talk about coping strategies, I do not mean the following. I do not mean brush your teeth, walk the dog, take a bubble bath, or what's another good, or journal. Journaling, maybe. But first, you got to be aware of what's eating at you. Those are not coping strategies. Those are distractions. Those are distractions. Binge eating is a distraction. If brushing your teeth worked as well as binge eating, people would have the whitest teeth in life. Or as one person said, if taking a bubble bath worked as well as binge eating, I would be like a wrinkled, pruny person at all times. No, those are distractions. Coping strategies are learning to name, tolerate, and express difficult emotions, and then validate, acknowledge, and reassure yourself. Name the emotion, express it, and then reassure yourself, support yourself. And I don't mean sitting through feelings. People often say, I just got to sit through my feelings. No, you can't sit through your feelings any more than you can drop them, positive think them away, or stuff them down. Good. Like the way to cope is to name it, to express it, and then to respond to yourself. And that means, getting comfortable with emotions. So when feelings like anxiety, loneliness, frustration, sadness, whatever, when they come up, because we're humans on this planet. And when we live on this planet, guess what? We can't be happy all the time. Things come up, we get affected by it. Feelings are reactions to situations. They are not character flaws. You are not an angry person, for example. You're a person who's angry. Well, gauge the intensity of these feelings. So one way of getting comfortable is, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, let's just take anger. If 10 is pure rage, white hot or red hot, is it? Rage. Well, what's a 1? Maybe a 1 or 2 is like, oh, annoyance. Maybe frustration is a 5 or a 7, depending on how you experience frustration. So start to gauge the intensity of your feelings, because otherwise a 2 is going to always feel like a 10. Annoyance is going to feel like rage. You have to start gauging the intensity of your feelings in addition to naming them. And by experiencing that, by gauging them, you start to regulate your feelings much more effectively, and they won't be so overwhelming, leading you to the kitchen. And as you practice naming and tolerating and engaging these emotions, then you can also work to express them differently. So that's where journaling comes in. That's where sharing with a trusted friend, the right friend, not the friend who's like, oh, look on the bright side. That is not the right friend. But journaling, being in a support group where you can really talk about what's going on without being told some, trite thing like, look on the bright side and it's all in your attitude. No, things can be hard, and you got to say, oh, it's hard, it sucks, it's difficult. That's how you get rid of feelings, by feeling them. We can't think them away or positive think them away. And of course, get really comfortable with self-reflection too. What's going on with me? What do I need in this moment? What am I hungry for, really, that isn't food? Developing these new coping strategies and these new ways of thinking, they are gradual. No one ever said, I'm going to learn to play the piano, and they sat down in front of a piano and played Tchaikovsky. That has never happened. You have to learn the keys, what fingers go with what keys. You got to learn the chords. You got to learn this and that. You got to learn a lot, and then you got to practice. Same with any change, including changing our relationship with ourselves. You're learning a new skill. So you're learning, what am I feeling, instead of what's in the kitchen? What am I thinking? What do I want? What's the emptiness within me? What do I need right now? What do I want right now? And so celebrate each moment of progress along the way, because maybe you're tolerating a difficult feeling for 10 minutes or 1 minute. And then you go binge anyway. I don't care. That 1 minute is going to become 10 minutes. It's going to become an hour. Is going to become a day. Is going to become a week, a month, a year, a lifetime. So it doesn't matter that you spent a minute dealing with your feelings before you binge. You spent that minute, and that minute can be then expanded. So really celebrate your progress instead of looking at what you're not doing. Each time you choose a different coping strategy, each time you check in with yourself and ask yourself, what's eating at me? What's going on with me? Why do I want to do this? What feels so unbearable right now? What do I not want to think about? What do I not want to know? Each time you ask yourself that and you tolerate a little bit of it and do something a little bit different, you are actually rewiring your brain, changing your neural pathways, and strengthening your capacity to take care of yourself. And with practice, with persistence, because it does take practice, it does take persistence, but you got to keep going. And eventually you get to where you want to go. I really like thinking of it as a marathon. If you say, like, I want to run a marathon, nobody goes, I want to run a marathon, and they run 26.2, I think it's 26.2 miles. I think that's what it is. Nobody. Maybe you run half a mile. If you say, oh, I only ran half a mile and I need to run 26.2 miles, so this sucks, well, then you're going to feel terrible. But if you say, I just ran half a mile and I am so proud of myself because I'm going to turn that half a mile into 3/4 of a mile, and then a mile, and so on, and I am on my way. How are you going to feel, right? Thoughts lead to feelings, lead to behavior. If it's, I only ran a half a mile and I am so far from the finish line, it's not even funny. Ugh, I'm never going to be able to do this. I'm a failure already. You're going to feel terrible. What's in the kitchen? DoorDash. Right? But if you say, I'm really proud of myself, I've set this goal to be different with myself. I've set this goal to be a detective of the mind. I'm going to figure out what's going on with me, what's eating at me, what's weighing on me, instead of focusing on food or focusing on what I weigh. Then you're going to feel curious. And when you feel curious, you feel curious. You don't feel the need to then, go run to the kitchen to get rid of that darn curiosity, which is so unbearable. No. So it's the way that you think about things in your life that affect how you feel. So if you run a marathon and you're training for a marathon, guess what? You're in a mental marathon. No, you are not at the finish line yet. You are not there. But you are getting there. And that counts, and that has to matter. Again, going back to turning the inner critic into a friend, if a friend was training for a marathon and they came to you and said, I ran half a mile, would you say to your friend, half a mile? And you think you're going to run the whole thing? You're a failure. What do you think you're doing? No, you'd say half a mile? Awesome, great, good for you. I'm so proud of you. Hey, how about you treat yourself the same way you would treat a friend? When you respond to yourself with compassion, and that becomes your go-to method of dealing with what goes on within you, when you get curious about what's in your head and what's in your heart, and figure out what that is and learn new ways of responding to yourself, expressing what's going on, guess what? You stop emotional eating. You stop binge eating. That's how it works. But there's no shortcut. There's no, hey, just eat this food and don't eat that food and you'll stop binging. There is no shortcut. And you cannot cure binge eating or emotional eating by dieting, because it's not about food. It's about you. And when you change your relationship with you, everything changes. So be patient with yourself. It takes time to train and retrain your brain. It takes time to develop new ways of thinking. It takes time to develop new, ways of responding to yourself. But you know what? Not as much time as you think. I have 2 programs, one 12 weeks, one 8 weeks. And people come to me often and they have struggled for decades with binge eating. And they say to me, are you telling me that in 8 weeks or 12 weeks, I can dramatically change my relationship with myself and with food? I say, yes. And they say, I don't believe you, but I want to believe you and I'm desperate. So they try it. And then 8 weeks later, 12 weeks later, they're going, oh my God, it's possible, because if you have the right guidance, you can create change. So celebrate your insights, no matter how small they seem to be. Each moment of self-reflection, it's planting a seed for change. Seek professional help, because a trained therapist can really support you and guide you in the right direction. And remember, the behavior of binge eating is not about willpower. It is not about control. It is not about addiction. It is not even about food. It means a part of you is trying to communicate something important to yourself. So by knowing what to do after a binge and what not to do, you open the door to really profound healing and growth. And that's how you do the binge cure. And thank you so much. That is our show for today. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Binge Cure with Dr. Nina. If you want a deeper dive into this topic, be sure to order your copy of my book, The Binge Cure: 7 Steps to Outsmart Emotional Eating. It is available on Amazon in all formats, including audiobook, if you want me to read it to you, which I did. So stay curious, not critical, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.
All clear. Great show.
Thanks, Jordan. Have a great week.
You too. Hope you have a great rest of your day as well.
Thank you. You too. Bye.